Is India quietly rewriting the balance of power by standing closer to China, even while taking weapons and aid from the West? Picture this: cameras flashing, world leaders seated, the stage of BRICS is set, and then it happens. Narendra Modi turns and smiles and embraces Xi Jinping. Just a hug? Maybe, but in geopolitics, gestures are rarely just anything. Here's the tension. Even as those arms locked, Indian and Chinese soldiers remained eye to eye in the icy Himalayas, the same mountains where they fought and bled at Galwan Valley in 2020. 20 Indian soldiers dead, dozens of Chinese casualties, and a memory that hasn't faded for either side. And yet there was Modi, smiling, embracing. If that doesn't make you pause, it should. Now, let's step back. For the West, Washington, London, Canberra, India wasn't supposed to be cozying up to China. India was supposed to be the bulwark against China. That's why the United States poured billions into defense deals, why the Quad was revived, why leaders bet on India to help keep Beijing in check. So what does this embrace mean? Betrayal? Calculation? Or something more complicated? To get it, you need to understand India's DNA in foreign policy. This isn't new. Since independence, India has practiced what it calls strategic autonomy. Translation: never let yourself be owned by one camp. Take from both, hedge, and play the middle path. During the Cold War, India refused to join NATO or the Soviet bloc. Instead, it led the non-aligned movement. That instinct hasn't died. Under Modi, it's sharper, bolder, and far more visible. Think about the contradictions. India signs billion-dollar defense contracts with the US, but keeps buying oil from Russia even when sanctions are high. It pledges to counter China in the Indo-Pacific, but then embraces Xi in front of cameras. To outsiders, it looks like hypocrisy. To India, it's leverage.
Here's the key. Modi's embrace wasn't about friendship. It was a signal, a warning shot to the West. Don't take us for granted. India will sit at every table, talk to every rival, and use every relationship to elevate itself. But there's a price. Optics matter. Trust matters. If you're sharing advanced weapons, sensitive intelligence, or investing billions, you expect a loyalty, or at least consistency. When Modi embraces Xi, even as soldiers glare across the border, that consistency looks shaky. So why now? Why would Modi take that risk in this moment? Let's decode it. At BRICS, India saw a chance. The bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, is trying to rebrand itself as the counterweight to Western dominance. Xi wants that badly. He sees BRICS as a tool for his vision of a multipolar world, one where the US no longer sets the rules. And Modi? He wants India to be the voice of the global South. By playing along, by embracing Xi, he signals, I can lead here too, not just in Washington's camp, but globally. The contradiction is glaring, standing with the US Navy in the Indo-Pacific one week, standing with Xi the next. And that contradiction is explosive, because it makes partners wonder which India is real, the counter-China India or the hedging India. Now, Modi can defend it as pragmatism. We need energy, we need growth, we need to talk even with rivals. And in truth, that's fair. No country with 1.4 billion people can afford to close doors. But here's the catch. What India calls pragmatism, the West calls betrayal. And in geopolitics, perception is often more powerful than reality. So the hug wasn't just symbolic, it was a test case. It asked the world, is India a trustworthy ally in the struggle for the 21st century order, or just a swing player chasing self-interest? That is the contradiction Modi has thrown into the spotlight with one embrace, one smile.
But the bigger question is this: what happens next? Does this move strengthen India's global hand, or does it plant the seeds of mistrust that could leave India dangerously isolated when it needs friends the most? So let's lean into the bigger picture. Modi's embrace of Xi wasn't just about India and China. It was a signal to the entire world. And the reactions, they matter, because they shape what happens next. Start with Washington.
The US has been betting heavily on India. Billions in defense sales, joint military drills, technology transfers, political capital, all placed on the assumption that India would stand firm against Beijing. But the image of Modi with Xi, that planted doubt, not necessarily enough to break the partnership, but enough to whisper in the back of policymakers' minds, can India really be counted on when the pressure is highest? And in geopolitics, doubt spread like cracks in glass. If Washington is second-guessing, so is Tokyo, so is Australia, so are European capitals that are watching closely. Trust, once shaken, doesn't fully return. Now think about Asia. Smaller nations, Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, have looked at India as a balancing force against China's expansion. But if India itself appears ambivalent, embracing Xi one day, pushing back the next, what message does that send? Maybe the message is this: no one can rely on anyone, and that tilts the regional balance toward Beijing, which thrives on uncertainty. But let's not forget Russia. Russia has been drifting into Beijing's arms since the Ukraine war cut its ties with the West. For Russia, BRICS is survival, and for India, keeping close to Russia ensures energy security and arms supplies. The embrace of Xi indirectly strengthens Russia's hand because a cohesive BRICS gives Moscow more legitimacy. So in a way, Modi's gesture helps both Beijing and Moscow, whether he meant it or not.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Some analysts say India isn't betraying anyone. They argue this is pure statecraft. India's playing a balancing game, squeeze benefits from all sides, never commit fully, and emerge as the indispensable power. From that angle, the embrace was a masterstroke, proof that India can pivot in every direction and still be courted by everyone. But there's a danger baked into that strategy, the danger of isolation. Because here's the brutal truth. In times of peace, hedging works. In times of crisis, hedging collapses. When bullets fly on the Himalayan border, when push comes to shove in the Indo-Pacific, ambiguity is no shield, and the West may not rush to India's side if it feels India has been playing both ways for too long. Let's sketch 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, the triumph of balance. India keeps walking this tightrope and it works. It gets weapons from America, oil from Russia, trade deals with Europe, cautious cooperation with China, and influence with the global South. Everyone needs India, so no one pushes too hard. The embrace with Xi is remembered as savvy statecraft. Scenario 2, the collapse of trust. Western capitals lose patience. Defense technology sharing slows, intelligence cooperation thins, investment gets cautious. India finds that by trying to please everyone, it has secured loyalty from no one. The embrace of Xi is replayed endlessly as the symbol of that mistrust. Scenario 3, the border reckoning. China escalates at the border, testing India's resolve. India calls for Western support, but finds hesitation. Memories of Modi's embrace resurface. The West provides words, maybe some aid, but no decisive backing. India is left exposed at the worst moment possible. Which scenario plays out depends on how much risk India is willing to take and how long the West tolerates the ambiguity.
Now let's look at the bigger global order. For decades, we lived in a world of clear camps, NATO versus the Warsaw Pact, US versus USSR. But today, we're sliding into a multipolar era. The US and China are the giants, yes, but middle powers like India, Turkey, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia hold the swing votes. Modi knows this. His embrace wasn't just for Xi, it was for the cameras, for the world. It was a reminder India won't be anyone's pawn. The question is, can ambiguity hold in a world that demands clarity? Here's the irony. The more multipolar the world becomes, the more every player demands loyalty. Washington doesn't want half-committed allies. Beijing doesn't want rivals pretending to be friends. Moscow doesn't want silent defectors. And in the kind of world, hedging isn't clever, it's dangerous. So maybe the embrace of Xi was more than just symbolism. Maybe it was the moment India showed its hand, that it will always put self-interest above alliances. Admirable to some, alarming to others, but undeniable either way. And here's the haunting possibility.
In trying to be everywhere at once, India risks being trusted nowhere. So was this betrayal? From the West's perspective, absolutely. From India's perspective, no. It was survival, strategy, leverage. Both can be true. And that's the paradox Modi has created with one hug, one calculated gesture. But let me leave you with this thought. History remembers moments not just for what they were, but for what they represented. Kennedy's handshake with Khrushchev, Nixon's visit to Mao, each one sent a signal that reshaped alliances. Modi's embrace of Xi may stand in that category, not because of the warmth, but because of the doubt it unleashed. And in geopolitics, doubt is a weapon as sharp as any sword. Sometimes betrayal isn't signed in treaties or written in secret memos. Sometimes it's whispered in a smile, broadcasted in a hug. And maybe, just maybe, the embrace at BRICS will be remembered as the moment the world order, quietly, began to shift.